So we're trying to understand India's groupings, India's engagement with these groupings, and why India engages with these groups. So up until now, we have understood India's engagement with all these important international groups, ranging from multinational organizations to these groupings. So why does India do that? India's grouping strategy, what is there? What is the pattern that we have uncovered up until now? So the pattern that we have deciphered is that India's approach to engaging with these groupings is that it is actually issue based. So all these groupings that India indulges into, they are issue based. They are non-exclusive. That means it's not an exclusive grouping. Let's say, which was in context of the Warsaw Pact or the NATO, not exclusive, but these are non-exclusive groupings, and they are multi-layered. So that is what we have deciphered up until now. India participates in competing platforms without contradiction. Now, this is what is actually termed as multi-alignment through multilateralism. These are value addition for you. Please go through them. Now, very important topic. Let's delve into it. And it is India and the global security issues. India and its global security issues, whatever is concerning India. So, nature of the security in the 21st century is changing. You'll study this as part of your security and all your disaster managements as separate, in-depth, in detail. But then again, we are studying it from the point of view of international relations. So in context, we'll try to understand what is the changing nature of security in the 21st century, where we're saying that 21st century security is much more dynamic. And how India engages with it. Security in today's times is no longer confined to the traditional context of traditional definitions of security. So they're no longer confined to territorial defense. We used to have army for defense of the country, for security of the country, but 21st century has mandated something which moves beyond the traditional definition of security. So it is no longer confined to territorial defense. It is no longer confined to conventional warfare. What that means, I'll try to explain just in a bit. Instead of global security, of this, global security is now increasingly shaped by non-state actors. I told you in one of our previous lectures how power in this 21st century is changing. It has always changed, but in today's century, it is doing something which it has never done before. That is, it is changing hands, but it is not changing hands horizontally. It's changing hands vertically. So that's giving rise to the new non-state actors with power. So in 21st century, global security is increasingly shaped by these non-state actors. It is shaped by digital domains. Not only that, it is shaped by space assets. So that is something that is, again, to be taken into consideration. Space assets are shaping the 21st century's security. We saw that in context of, let's say, for example, the Starlink's connectivity to providing connectivity to the terrorist hit or turmoil hit place. So we saw that happening recently in Venezuela. We've seen that happening in Iran, where if the sovereign government decides to curb the internet, but then again, these non-state actors, this individual organization called Starlink, headed by Elon Musk, that provides the chain of satellites, and through satellites, internet is provided to that area. So that is the changing domain of security now. Where does that leave global national sovereignty? Where does, if a non-state actor can override the decisions of a sovereign government, which we are seeing the case in terms of Elon Musk through his Starlink providing internet services when the sovereign nations have decided otherwise. Where does that leave national sovereignty? So that's a question to be discussed. Now, global security is also increasingly being shaped by maritime commons. So we've tried to understand that. India's security challenges are therefore they're multi-domain, they are transnational, and they are technology driven. Again, touching upon terrorism as a global security threat. Uh, Terrorism as a global security threat. We'll delve into what is India's take on terrorism, what is India's stance on terrorism, how India caters to it, what are the international relations that India engages in to counter terrorism, and what is its stand on it. But prior to that, I think it's very important for you all to understand that let's say on 11th of September 2001, the world changed in 102 minutes. It changed in, I want you to understand this properly. It changed in 102 minutes. On 26th November 2008, India changed in 60 minutes itself. And somewhere between these two dates, terrorism stopped being regional. It stopped being regional out of the blue, and it became a global disease. Terrorism does not ask for your passport. It never asks for your passport. And it does not respect borders. It is not fighting soldiers. It's not fighting soldiers. It fights civilians. Terrorism fights civilians. So that is a very big issue. It isn't just a security issue. It is the question of civilizations. It is the question of governance, and it is the question of global conscience altogether. When we talk about terrorism in international relations, we're not talking about conventions and committees only. But let me ask you something very uncomfortable. Was 26/11 only an attack on India? Was only it an attack on Mumbai? No. 26/11 was the attack on the very idea of pluralism. It was an attack on the very idea of openness of Indian society, and it was an attack on the democratic structures of India. Terrorism today is a psychological warfare. The bomb doesn't just kill a few. The bombs which are dropped, they don't just kill a few. In fact, the fear paralyzes millions. So, and that fear travels very much faster than missiles. Through news channels, social media, encrypted networks, it travels faster, and it paralyzes the whole of the civilian community. So terrorism is a system. It is not an event, mind you. In the 21st century, terrorism is not a lone wolf attack. It is financially and financed globally. It is radicalized digitally. This terrorism in the 21st century is trained transnationally. So, and it is protected politically. So terrorism has emerged as one of the biggest threats in the 21st century. From Al-Qaeda to ISIS, from Boko Haram to all these terrorist organizations operating like multinational corporations of violence. So, but here's the irony. Globalization made trade borderless. We understood that. The same globalization made terrorism borderless. Somewhere in the global discourse, a very dangerous shortcut was taken. Terrorism was made synonymous with Islam. This was a shortcut that was taken. And this shortcut is not just inaccurate, it is intellectually lazy and morally corrosive. Terrorism is not a religion, it's a method, it's a strategy at work. Violence used to create fear. If terrorism belonged to one faith, then one religion or one culture, history would actually look very, very different. If it belonged to one single religion. To confuse terrorism with Islam is to actually insult 1.9 billion people for the crimes of a certain few. And that's what these terrorists actually want. That would be playing directly into their hands. They want a civilizational divide. Now, India has lived through it. It is living through it. And India is at the very center of all of this. So terrorism, let's look at the evolution of terrorism. Modern terrorism is characterized by intellectual extremism, cross-border networks, and it is characterized by state sponsorship. States are sponsoring terror and the use of technology and finance. So that is those are the new parameters under which terrorism is operating. India is facing cross-border terrorism. It is not only facing cross-border terrorism, but India is also facing homegrown radicalization. We're facing lone wolf attacks where individuals are acting like kamikazes, and these lone wolf attacks are taking place. India and the United Nations counter-terrorism framework. Now, what is India's and United Nations counter-terrorism framework? Various key instruments in that domain are United Nations counter-terrorism strategy, UNCTS. So, United Nations Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy. It is a Security Council, various Security Council resolutions of the United Nations. For example, 1267, which imposes sanctions on terror entities, 1373, counter-terrorism financing, and 1540, weapons of mass destruction proliferation. So these are certain instruments. We're just touching upon the instruments that United Nations, these world organizations, use to counter terrorism. So India actively pushes for stronger enforcement of these, not just symbolic resolutions. So that has been India's stance in this aspect. Now, another important proposal that India has itself vouched for is Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. So it was actually proposed by India itself in 1996. So but it hasn't been ratified so far. It hasn't been acknowledged so far. It is a subject of debate, and mostly the debate is about the definition of terrorist. While as the OIC members have called for not including defining the very definition of terrorism, those people fighting for their freedom or fighting against colonial exploitation, people fighting for, or groups of people fighting for their rights, they should not be considered to be terrorists. So on the very definition of terrorism, there is no unanimity present. That is why Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism, the CCIT, which India itself proposed in 1996, it lags, it is still in an abyss. So it aims to define terrorism very clearly. This framework intends to define terrorism very, very clearly. It removes any political ambiguity, and it criminalizes all terrorist acts. Now, it has been blocked by, as I told you, disagreement on freedom fighters. CCIT remains India's flagship diplomatic initiative against terrorism. Then again, the very definition of freedom fighters is something that is not a point of consensus between member countries and participating nations. So India's flagship diplomatic initiative still remains in abyss. So then let's go ahead and discuss the FATF, Financial Action Task Force, and terror financing. So the FATF stands for Financial Action Task Force, FATF. It's a global watchdog against money laundering and terror financing. So every, just like every administrative act requires money, has financial implications, terrorism also requires money to survive. And in that aspect, Financial Action Task Force is this world's global, it's the global watchdog for against, in fact, money laundering and terror financing. India is a full member of Financial Action Task Force since 2010. India has been using the Financial Action Task Force for pressurizing Pakistan. Many a times Pakistan has been getting warnings. It has been being censured by FATF many a time. So India has been using this Financial Action Task Force platform to actually pressurize Pakistan and highlight financial networks of terror. Uh, another very important domain in context of security, international security and national security and international relation lies in cyber warfare. Cyber warfare, cyber security. So that is an important domain in the 21st century. Cyber, in our last lectures, I told you how power has in the 21st century gone to the internet. Power in the 21st century resides in the internet to the tune that global governance and global commerce and global trade takes place on or through the internet, and it is not governed. So the lesson of history is that wherever power goes, governance will have to follow. Wherever power goes, governance will have to follow. If governance does not follow wherever power goes, it leads to anarchy. In 21st century, power resides in the internet, which is not governed. Again, that becomes a very important cause of worry because it is not governed and it has immense power. So let's look and try to understand nature of cyber threats. These cyber threats include state-sponsored attacks. They include ransomware, where they are ransoming, the hackers are ransoming, they have hacked your systems, and now as ransom they're demanding something. It can be money, it could be non-monetary. So that's ransomware. Then there's data theft. Then there's critical infrastructure sabotage, hacking government websites, that would be included in here. So India's vulnerabilities are very much visible because India is vulnerable to all of this because we have a very expanding digital infrastructure. India's digital infrastructure with its boom in internet and mobile communication and mobile connectivity and internet connectivity, and India's e-governance programs and all our digital banking programs, they are backed by this boom in digital infrastructure. So we have this expanding digital infrastructure, and that makes India very vulnerable to these attacks. Then we have digital platforms, public platforms like Aadhaar and UPI. So UPI being a success story of India. So all these make India much more vulnerable to cyber attacks, and cyber security becomes an important concern. So India's cybersecurity architecture has certain parameters, it has certain institutions, and these institutions which have been created for India's cybersecurity are Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. It's called as the CERT, CERT, and CERT-In. So it stands for Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. So working in the cybersecurity domain. Then we have National Cybersecurity Coordinator, NCSC, and then we have the Defense Cyber Agency. These are Indian agencies working in the domain of cyber security. What are the international cyber norms? Let's just skim through them. The global platforms with respect to cybersecurity are United Nations Group of Governmental Experts. It concerns itself also with cyber security. Then Open-Ended Working Group, OEWG. So it also concerns itself with cybersecurity. India's position with respect to cybersecurity and all these forums is that sovereignty must be ensured in cyberspace also. So sovereignty, not just territorial sovereignty, but sovereignty should be maintained in cyberspace also. Not only that, it is the state's responsibility to actually do that. And India vouches for an open and a secure internet, not like closed, like China is pitching for. So India is vouching for open and secure internet. Are we clear up until now? Am I audible? Are we clear? Okay. So we just touched upon something called as the space security. Let's skim through that. Space security, protecting the final commons. Now, what does that mean? Space in 21st century is of much more importance than it was ever before. Technology has manifested itself into and has led us into the space, and space races we have seen happening since long now, just after the World War II ended and America and Soviet Russia entered into this madness of a space race. Who was going to put their first satellites into space, who was going to put their first human into space. So millions and billions and trillions of money spent on those adventures. But then again, we have reached a place in history where space is of much more importance than it was ever before, be that global communication, national communication, geopositioning, be it navigation, be it even defense for that matter, in particular defense nowadays, since we are on the subject. So it has strategic importance. Now, space assets support communication, they support navigation, they support weather forecasting, and they support military operations. And disruptions in any of these domains will cripple the very essence of a sovereign nation. Uh, so they are important in terms of economics, they are important in terms of civilian use, they are important in terms of defense systems. India's space security capabilities. So let's talk about Mission Shakti, which was launched in 2019. It consists of an anti-satellite ASAT test. Uh, so Mission Shakti demonstrated that India can protect its space also. So it had an anti-satellite test and it demonstrated deterrence capability. Now deterrence is different from defense, which we talked about when we were trying to understand the nuclear power and nuclear energy. So India has emphasized that this test was non-weaponized weaponization intent. So this was carried out because India has been a supporter of, even in context of nuclear power, India has been a supporter of nuclear disarmament, although it has not been a party to NPT, non-proliferation treaty, but then again, India supports nuclear disarmament as a whole. So this also demonstrated India's commitment to peaceful use. Global space governance. So there are, just like land is divided, space is also divided between nations. And for global space governance, there's a few key treaties which you need to understand. And they are the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, Outer Space Treaty, and then the Liability Convention of 1972. India, in its own might, has supported prevention of arms race in outer space, which is called porous. The short form is porous. So India has supported arms race in the outer space. I told you space is now weaponized. We discussed that some time back. Even space is weaponized. So India has been a supporter of prevention of arms race in outer space, porous, and India has shown responsible space behavior up until now. So that just Keep yourself updated with new developments in the realms of space technology and space governance, and if India engages in any dealings. So that would be important in your context. Maritime security, we have touched upon this. I'm just skimming through it. Maritime security, Indian Ocean and global trade. It is important in context of India because 90% of India's trade by volume goes by the sea. It moves by the sea. Indian Ocean hosts major sea lines of communication. It connects. It is at a very strategic position. If you look at peninsular India, you'll find that out. So this hosts major sea lines of communication. Then again, there are various challenges or various threats associated, and these challenges or these threats are piracy threats. Then there are there's maritime terrorism, there's illegal fishing. In our budget, we have been hearing a lot. In the current budget, we have heard the finance minister talk about fish and exclusive economic zones a lot in context of fishing. So now they wouldn't be taxed and they would be allowed to sell their produce, export their produce. So then again, a question of economy. But illegal fishing has been one of the core concerns of our foreign policy. Great power, rivalry, we have understood it in our previous lessons. India's maritime security framework, let's go into that. So India's key initiatives are the Sagar Doctrine, we have covered that. Information Fusion Centers, Indian Ocean Region, IFC, IOR, so where we share information with our regional partners, and naval exercises like Malabar and Milan exercises. These are India's initiatives in the maritime architecture, maritime governance. India positions itself as a net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. Let's touch upon UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea and Freedom of Navigation. Again, I'm skimming through them because we have already covered them before. India has supported the United Nations Convention on Laws of the Sea based maritime order. It supports peaceful dispute resolution. India avoids military confrontation. That has been our policy. And in fact, that is one of the most important things being discussed in the parliament right now, whereas it should have been the budget that was to be discussed in the parliament. But then again, the parliament chooses to discuss and the opposition chooses to discuss, bring about military, how India is avoiding military confrontation with China. So this, I'm sure you must be aware about how the parliament right now is disrupted by the opposition, and the budget session, in fact, such an important session of the parliament, has been disrupted, and that too based on M.M. Narwane's book, which is yet to be published. And this book, which is yet to be published, has been recently in news because it talks about how Rajnath Singh and Modi were asked by M.M. Narwane about giving them orders with respect to China, and that didn't happen. So the opposition wanted a discussion on that, and that didn't happen. So that is what is disrupting the parliament right now. That again brings us to how India avoids military confrontation. Okay.